So, of course, since we are integrating BACnet devices into our project, the first thing that I'm going to be, of course, doing is going to be adding our BACnet driver into our devices. Just a quick note, I am not going to be showcasing the integration with KNX. This, I think we've all know how this is done, but I do have the switch here has some light control and some temperature set point controls. So if I press the button on the KNX switch, you can see that the value of the switch has been to true and false, and same goes for temperature. So if I go temperature set point and if I set it to 23, we can see that the value is live here. So the KNX part works. The KNX part has been done. The next step that we're going to be doing is, of course, going to be doing the BACnet part. So the first thing, you add the BACnet driver into your configurator, and you can see we support all the connection types. So depending on the device, on the gateway, and of course on the system, you can switch between different connection types. Of course we have IP, serial. Also, if you do have a project and if you are running our Jigsaw Pro, and if the BACnet device requires a serial connectivity, you can also use the Jigsaw's Pro internal gateway to connect to your BACnet device and then control the devices that are in the project, right? Of course, read the instructional manual when it comes for the connection settings. So it's going to be easier, and we can actually set the connection up. But for today, the BACnet board that I do have has an IP interface. So I am going to be switching from Jigsaw back to IP. I'm gonna leave the port and all the connection settings set to default because that's how the board is set up. And below this, we have generated node names. So this function, basically, when we are going to be importing the BACnet addresses, bOS is going to generate the names for us. So it's going to be easier for us to identify what is what. So bOS is going to tell you that this is a temperature set point, circuit board, lights, shades. So it's going to be easier for us to then identify and control the devices. And we can, of course, sort them for easier transparency. Subscription time is for our COV subscription. So when we're going to be subscribing and get live feedback from the device, this is the time that we set. And I'll show you later on. We also have a cyclical read. That is basically the setting for this is here in the main BACnet node. So the way the IP communication when it comes between bOS BACnet works is basically extremely simple. You would, in theory, just enable the BACnet driver. And when you enable the BACnet driver, bOS sends out a who is. So is there a BACnet device that's ready to communicate with us? And it should, in theory, the device should respond, yes, I am here and I can connect. So if I enable this driver, the bOS sends out the signal, and you can see that we immediately get a response from the board. So the board is basically ready for our connection. If for any reason you don't get a response, you can also, of course, check the settings if this device is by default sending out this data that we are able to connect. If not, you can also select the main BACnet node, you press add, and you can also add the device in manually. So for manual device adding, you will need to know basically all the devices configuration or the connection settings. So you would open basically the address up and you would fill in all the necessary information for the device, to connect to the device. So that is only in cases if the device may not be added automatically in. But unfortunately for us, the device here has been, able to respond, and we can see that all the information from the device has been now listed here. So in the next step, what we can actually now do is we can open up and we can start importing the BACnet basically addresses and controls. The way this is done, of course, we go to import here, import BACnet objects, and we run this function. we can see that all of these, so BACnet has responded and say this particular board behind me has all of these basically addresses and options for us to control the device. And at this point, when it comes for current version of bOS, there are some minor things that we are going to be improving. First thing is going to be we are going to be adding in the select all option, because currently it is a little bit of a trick that you need to do in order to select all. So the way you would work normally now would be you would select whichever address you're going to be controlling and you would import it in. But unfortunately here, you can see that we can't actually tell what these addresses are, which is also kind of tricky for us, at least now, because we don't know what these analog inputs are. We don't know what object's binary input is. So it's a little bit tricky. So the easiest thing that people are now doing is basically they are selecting all and importing everything and then removing the things that aren't needed. So in the next, I think, week or so, next 2 weeks, we're going to be releasing a brand new version that is going to be improving this import wizard. So as I mentioned, we're going to be adding a select all button, which is going to be selecting all the addresses. And the second thing that we're going to be adding, we are going to be adding another option or a function that is going to ask the device what is the actual name of the address. If I open up another software for BACnet, this is just yet another BACnet Explorer program. I would think it's extremely popular when it comes to BACnet integration. And I'm just going to add the same thing like we did with bOS. And if I open up the device, you can see we have the exactly same thing happening here. We have all the addresses, but we don't know what is what. But this software, what cleverly it does, if I select it, we can see that we can now see the names, what's going on. See, power circuit, lighting circuit, objects, lighting circuit. So all of these words or names are going to be generated. And that is also what we are going to be adding in as well. So we're going to be adding here an option to generate names. bOS is going to ask Legrand or BACnet device to please generate the names, and then you'll be able to handpick and select whichever address you want to import. But for the time being, I would say the optimal way of doing this is simply selecting all and importing everything. The way this is done, I can give you like a quick tip on how this is done. So you can press Control A, which is standard for select all. So all addresses are now selected. And now if I right click in the menu, you will see that bOS is going to select all of these nodes. So now all of these nodes are now selected. I can now hit import and bOS is going to import the addresses. Good thing about the import is that once the addresses are imported, bOS is going to generate the names for us. So you can see that we got now ambient temperature, temperature set points, dimmers, power circuits. So the names are actually being generated. The only problem now is that we imported all, and you don't need all the 400 addresses that were added. You only need selected few to get the proper working device. So now that we have our addresses added in, manual of the device is also very important when it comes to the addresses. Because similar to Modbus, you will then know which address, like if I select this temperature set point, it has its own specific temperature set point address, which is in this case 0, and the manual is going to tell us, okay, this address is actually controlling the temperature set point in that specific object. So I know this, so I'm just going to rename it. So it's going to be easier later on when we're going to be integrating them into the project. So the first thing we can now also do is, if we open up the address or the control, we see all the basic information. So we see what's the type, so it's going to be an object analog value, what's the name, and what kind of units is also sending out. And below this, we also have our read type. So read type, we need to set if we want to receive feedback from the device. So if we use it in the visualization, if we use it in our tasks, we need to set this retype so we have live feedback. And there are a couple of different ways we can do this, or different options. The first is going to be the subscribe COV. So subscribe COV is going to be subscribing to this specific address, and then all changes that are happening on the device, they are all going to be automatically sent to bOS. So if I go to values, I see 21 degrees. Hopefully it's going to be working now as it should. So, and if I go set point, the touch buttons are sometimes a little bit tricky. Sometimes I need to, it's a little bit of the touch screen. So 24 degrees. We set the temperature set point to 24. It takes a second or so for the device to send the value out, and we can see that we have feedback in the configurator. So this is if we want to receive live feedback. This is useful for set points, lights, shades, and so on. But if we have some ambient temperature that it doesn't change every second, we can also change this read type to either a minute read. So every minute, bOS is going to be asking the device what's going on with the status. And we can also set this to cyclical read. So cyclical read is, if you remember, the read delay that we set here in the main BACnet node. So this all depends on how quickly you want to receive the data. So we have the temperature set point. We can also now check what's going on with the rest, and we can do some lighting circuits. So these are going to be the lights in the device. So hopefully if I change this value from false to true, let's see what happens. You can see that this LED here, hopefully it's visible in the camera, this LED here, it turns on and off. So, and if I check the picture, this is an entrance lamp. So what I can do is I can just rename it lamp. And think this C3 should be this top lamp. As you can see, C3 is this ceiling lamp, basically, them turning on and off. And now we can also add this in and rename this to ceiling lamp. And of course, in order for me to get live feedback from what's going on with the device, I'm also going to subscribe to both of these lamps. So if someone in the room or someone does actually change the value of the lamps, we're going to be receive live feedback in here in the configurator. We also have some fan speeds. So for fan control, so let's do fan speed. And if I subscribe again with the subscribe COV, if I press the, let's say, fan speed and I increase it to number 3, we can see that we also get the fan speed value here. So in theory, that is basically it when it comes to the BACnet integration. All in all, I think the process is fairly simple. We just need to get the device in. Later on with the next update, when the import wizard is going to be a little bit improved, it's going to be even easier because we're going to have a lot less of all of these unnecessary nodes that maybe we don't need. So that's going to be a great, addition or, improvement when it comes to the BACnet integration. But as long as you have, as long as the device is added in and the import wizard works, the whole process then by just simply renaming and adding these devices to the visualization onto our tasks should be fairly simple. So since now that we have the BACnet controller device working, now we can now also start communicating with other devices. Communication between other devices can actually be done fairly simple and easy. To do this, to communicate between, let's say, BACnet and then our KNX, can be done extremely simple just by using a couple of variables. So if I go under tasks, I'm just going to create a folder, let's say BACnet KNX communication. So we add this folder in, and the next thing we need to do, we can now start adding our variables. So if I go and press add, I have all of these variables that I can use. And of course, if I want to link, lights and, shades and temperature control, I will need to use exactly the same type. So if we are using a Boolean value, so on and off, I will need to use a Boolean variable. Temperature set point, of course, is going to be our double. So you need to be careful when you're linking these addresses together that you are using the correct types. So let's say entrance lamp. So we're going to be adding those two, and then ceiling lamp, add this in, and then also we have our double for temperature set point. Set point. Yeah. And when I add the variables in, you can see that we have these reference options. So if you have been using bOS for quite a while, you see that you will know that this wasn't an option, like, I don't know, a couple of updates back. I don't know which release it was that we added this in, but this has now greatly improved the workflow and the ease of use when it comes to the communication between devices. Because what this is now going to allow us is I can go, let's say the ceiling lamp, that's the big one that you can see. I can go to my BACnet. I can add the, let's find it, ceiling lamp. I can add the ceiling lamp. And what I can do also is I can go to my KNX set point, light 2, for instance, and I can also add the KNX lamp in. So what is this now going to allow us that I can actually go into the KNX switch that I have here. I press it and I turn the lamp off, as you can see. And now with just a simple, variable, an entrance lamp Boolean variable, I was able to very, very quickly and easily have this communication between KNX and BACnet. So in the past, in some cases, when it comes to some specific statuses and control, you will still need to use, let's say, a program task for, checking up the statuses. But in most cases, with a simple integration like this, you can just add a variable and you can just add these two in, and it basically communicates both ways. So if I would change BACnet, it will then change on the KNX. And if I change the KNX, of course, it's going to go back to BACnet. So this is a perfect combination if you have a ton of BACnet devices, lights on and off, but then you're also using KNX in the project. Same goes for the temperature set point. So for the temperature set point, I will go to KNX temperature set point. I would go on BACnet and also add the BACnet temperature set point. Yeah, so now we have, again, set point control for both of these devices. And if I press, let's say 21.5 degrees, we went from 24 or 23, but down to 21. So if you don't see it on the screen, I can also check it here on the BACnet. So values, we can see that we have 21.5. And if I would change, if I change it here, let's see, hopefully it's going to work. So it's 23 degrees on BACnet. The value should be sent to KNX as well. And you can see the KNX, value has also been changed. So as you can see, just by using a simple, variable, we were able to get a quick and simple communication between two completely different types of devices.